local poet, Poetessa Fishhouse?
No, I'm afraid I haven't.
No.
Poetry is not an exact science. Some would say, what use this poetry? The life of the poet lived for naught. But poetry is so much more than naught. It is the clean piercing of a sword through the rotten carcass of language. It is dangerous and unexpected and not for the meek, who apparently haven't inherited much. It is timid and shy as well. Even then, it seeks the truth. Here is where we found Poetessa Fishhouse, unafraid to take the risk of writing poetry, much like crossing the street.
So few people seem to read poetry. In fact, funny thing is that when I was growing up, anybody who pretended to have any knowledge of literature would read poetry, but now many people I know, book editors, writers, who know all kinds of fiction, hardly read poetry at all.
My earliest poem was titled Mother. Long time ago. I'll try and remember it for you. Mother, red, womb, singing, womb, mother. Soft breast, milk, flowing milk, mother. Mother. Why? Why do you betray me? Why? And yet over and over, I cry and cry, mother, 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 the words mother, mother, ma, mo, the, ma, tha, mo, mo.
Her poetry is deals with sexuality issues, particularly lesbian issues.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of that going around.
Poetessa Fishhouse.
Fishhouse. Oh yes, I think she is one of the new, I believe she's one of the new lesbian influences in town.
When the makers of this film asked the poetessa if they could document her, she was a little shy at first.
I make connections all the time. I'm always making connections. I connect. That's part of my pain as a poet. It's part of my general state of being that I'm connecting all the time. I'm always in connection. I'm always connected, as it were. When I walk through the streets, I'm connecting. I'm connecting to the pain of those in the streets, those that are hungry, those that are homeless, those that are without people to love them. There's so much pain in the world, and the poetessa feels this pain. The poetessa knows this pain, and the poetessa creates poetry from this place, from this place of pain. I put forth poetry. From this place of pain, I put forth poetry as the poetessa. That's why I am the poetessa. That's why people respect the poetessa. pain, poetry, place of pain, putting forth poetry. It's simply people responding to the pain. That's why they love me. That's why they respond. That's why the New York Times thinks I'm the poet that I am.
I was out in San Francisco a couple of years ago, and I went to a poetry slam. I'd never been to one. I'm not really specialized in poetry, but I did go to one. Can't think where it was. It was downtown somewhere. Yeah, it was quite a bash. As a matter of fact, there were a number of poets there, and I'm pretty sure I might have heard her. But talk of a bash, actually, I had to leave about halfway through because the things got kind of rough, and there was a small riot, and I know somebody kicked me someone kicked me. I wonder if that was Poetessa.
Simple, simple things. Simple things cause the poetessa to respond in simple ways. Simple words, simply on paper. Poetry. Thank you. I see you responding to me. I like you now. I no longer hate you, detest you, feel that you are foul the way I once did.
Thank you.
When you called me and said you wanted to do a documentary on me as if I were dead, as if my poetry were no longer alive, as if you were going to document me somehow, as if I'm not documenting myself every moment. My greatest poem. Not the children. Not the children. No. Not the children. And then I follow with the line, not the children. I'm sorry. Stop the camera.
Somebody stop the camera. Are you all right, Poetessa?
I just feel too much. I read many things. I read many books at once. I read, and this is something everyone, people are taught to read one book at a time. Now, I feel this is absurd. I try to read several books at once, and that way the different books synthesize in my mind, the mind of Poetessa, and I create a book, a novel, as it were, a line that is Poetessa line, and not the line which any given novelist might be trying to impose upon me. For instance, in this way, I can go from a romance novel to The Grapes of Wrath to some unpublished novelist who sent me their novel, and I received many novels in the mail. And I am able to synthesize stories of my own. I try to tell my own stories. And in that way, I novelize my world. Ziggurats in the warm moon of unending context. Strike. Strike. Oh, abasement. What do ya
think. Strike, strike, oh, abasement. No. Strike, strike, oh, abasement. Not basement. Oh, abasement. What do you think? See, that's a little bit of... What do you think? My love lies on a shrieking bed, tortured in the man world, and I...
Do you know this poem? Professor, as you know, Poetessa's been a little slow in gaining critical acclaim. So what do you attribute that?
Well, I attribute that to the critics, the poetry critics in the San Francisco area that, frankly, if I can be truly honest with you, have constantly backbited me and have put me down, have put my work down, my students. They don't like my work. They don't like where I'm from. They don't like my message at all. They don't like my teaching. I don't know what it is. I think it is, in a way, it's jealousy, I'm sure. It's kind of a professional kind of witch hunt, in a way. I feel that I've been ostracized.
Pavel Milosevic.
I remember a Frida Fishhouse. She was a student. I'm assuming that she is the person that you're talking about, eh?
I was very young when I knew Pavel.
I felt that there was a seed of talent in her work that needed to be nurtured, needed to be grown to a certain extent, and I feel that I might have helped her along the path.
I was Poetessa the flower, and Pavel loved Poetessa the flower.
She had edges in her work that was very, how do you say, stark, bleak. It was a dark kind of, a dark force in a sense that was kind of pervading her work. And I felt that with a little coaching, what do you say, a little nurturing, a little enthusiastic support of her creativity, I feel that I have made a difference in her work. I feel we struck up a friendship, professional mostly, but oftentimes those kind of things, with this kind of situation, professor-student, you know, sometimes it drifts into other dramatic consequences, and I feel that that might have spurred her on to newer creative highs and places where she could not normally have gone in her work.
He encouraged me. He encouraged me to work, he encouraged me to write, he encouraged me to poetize. He encouraged me to poetessa.
When I write, I'm writing poetry and it comes out. It attacks the page, and I feel in the same way she must have had the same urges and the same feelings.
But, as they say, you gotta know her. What I mean is that it means more, must mean a lot to her, and it probably means a lot to the people she knows and reads to. I mean, poetry can also be a kind of a club, but outside the club, it doesn't seem to tell me much, apart from the fact that the writer wants to write. It's like someone who wants to sing. You have to want to sing, but not everyone who wants to can do much else except sing in the shower. I guess you could say that this poem is sort of what you might call poetry in the shower.
I feel the pain of the critic. I wrote a volume on that. Because critics are in pain, that is why they cause pain, and I am a victim of the pain of the critic. But I am larger than the critic. The critic is not inside of me. The critic is outside. The critic is the eyes of the world in pain, looking in at Poetessa and causing pain.
I wish anybody who writes poetry more poetry.
Those who criticize are those who can't do. They can do something very well, these critics. These critics criticize very well. I must compliment them on their criticisms.
I feel that because of the environment and the way that San Francisco has given birth to a liberalism, what we say, as opposed to a communism kind of thing. The liberal atmosphere has given birth to a wide creative kind of splurge, if you will.
I just know a few of the San Francisco poets, and not that many of the younger ones. I occasionally read in reviews and so on, but I can't say I have many names that stick with me. I tend to know some of the older ones, the established ones, you know, like Haas or Miwash. Of course, Ferlinghetti.
Lawrence Ferlinghetti.
The little airplanes of the heart with their brave little propellers. What can they do against the winds of darkness?
I wrote several of Lawrence's books, if you must the truth be told. I wrote second-rate poetry for Lawrence.
Was Dog one of those poems?
Dog was one of the poems. Name the poems, I wrote them. I mean, I wrote, and as I said, I wrote second-rate poetry. I saved the best for myself, of course. Dog, he wrote a stupid poem overly romantic, overly literary, and I said, Lawrence, simplify. Is this dog walking down the street? Then it is walking down the street. Does this dog jump? It jumps. If it jumps, period. That has since become a pathetic poem in the minds of puny people with puny minds. Pathetic, puny people feel that this poem is important. Dog.
All invited upstairs for the book signing and wine, if you can.
Mr. Ferlinghetti, what do you think of Poetessa Fishhouse?
What?
Poetessa Fishhouse? She's a local poet.
Yeah.
Have you heard of her?
Where?
Here in San Francisco.
Definitely not. What's her last name?
Fishhouse.
Oh, I have.
He's an asshole. He's an asshole. Don't. No. Lawrence Ferlinghetti. Probably in the early 80s, I finally got around to seeing Rocky. And when I saw that film, I was most inspired by him as a boxer. I never boxed, but I consider myself a boxer. I suppose I box with my pen. So I consider myself to be an athlete a left-handed athlete, an athlete of the left hand. I do everything with the left hand. I write with my left hand. I scramble eggs with my left hand. I masturbate with my left hand. I am a left-handed woman. If I were Sylvester Stallone, I would be Sylvester Stallone, but I am Poetessa, and so I am Poetessa, and I am an athlete of the left hand. Sometimes I go up to the Twin Peaks and I gaze out over the city and I try to imagine all the different people at once in the city, breathing in the city. Because if you think about it, everyone in the city is breathing at this moment, even now as we are speaking. No one remembers the Poetessa. They've all forgotten me. They've all ceased to remember. Something about my poems elicits senility, I think, in people. They've all forgotten me. But I forgive them, and it's okay. I smoke with my left hand, I write with my left hand, I masturbate with my left hand. And I write with my left hand, I masturbate with my left hand.
I get the sense you would like to see the Poetessa again, wouldn't you?
I'd rather see you again. Do you write poetry?
No.